Hey, how's it going? This is just a quick screencast to polish up the plots from the previous one. Just showing the Nets' performance in games that were missed by their stars or some combination of those. You can see in the plot on the right, the initials represent Durant, Irving, and Harden, and the margins in the games that they've played together in throughout the regular season. So the bottom panel, bottom row, middle panel shows that it is somewhat normally distributed in the margin, and the middle row right panel, Irving and Durant, skewed positive. So that was appeared to be a good combination. So yeah, just a quick one to wrap it up. Might be interested in this if you'd like to know how to polish some of your GG plots.
A while back, it was a meditation on the injunction to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. And what Jung pointed out, which I really liked, was that wasn't an injunction to be nice to other people. It was an invitation to reciprocity. It was something like this. It's like you should figure out how you would like to be treated, like you were taking care of yourself, not how you would like people to respond to you. It's more important than that. It's like, imagine you had a child that you really cared for, and someone said, well, people will treat this child exactly like you want them to, but you have to figure out what that is. And so then you'd have to sit down for like a month and you'd think, okay, well, how do you want your child to be treated? You don't want everyone just to be nice to him, you know. You want people to challenge him, and you want people to discipline him, and you want people to tell him when he's wrong. It's like, you don't just want everyone to be nice. That's pathetic. It's pathetic. There's no challenge in that. There's no challenge in that. Human beings are self-conscious, and we know about our limitations, and we know about our weaknesses. And so we can have contempt for human beings in general because, you know, we're just flawed and breakable and all of that. But we know ourselves better than we know everyone else. And so you have a very acute sense of how you're not up to scratch, and so that leads naturally to a sort of self-contemptuous attitude. People are more likely to give prescription medication to their pets than to take them themselves. Imagine someone that you treat well, that you love, and try to treat yourself that way. You got to detach from yourself a bit. You got to think, okay, well, I'm a person among other people, and I deserve at least as much respect as a person among other people. I should be trying to help myself across time. And instead of being self-contemptuous and self-destructive, I need to take care of myself as if I'm potentially valuable, and to lay out my life that way. It's hard for people. They don't take care of themselves as well as they should. Take care of your room, take care of your things, like have some respect for yourself as a miraculous being, because that is actually what you are. There is a lot of potential within you. You're necessary more than you think to the unfolding of things. That's the thing about being an individual. It's the thing that Western civilization has always recognized, that as an individual, you have a light that you have to bring into the world, and that if you don't bring it into the world is a dimmer place, and that's a bad thing, because when the world is a dim place, it can get very, very, very dark.
If you have a friend and you tell them bad news, they're actually sad, and you can tell them. They will listen. You know, they'll listen. They'll take the damn pain, and they won't tell you about some worse thing that happened to them, defensively, say. Or they won't secretly be happy that you got knocked off your pedestal. They'll listen. And then the other thing is if you have a friend and something good happens to you, they're happy.
Like you have an ethical responsibility to take care of yourself, you have an ethical responsibility to surround yourself with people who have the courage and faith and wisdom to wish you well when you've done something good, and to stop you when you're doing something destructive. And if your friends aren't like that, then they're not your friends. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. People don't exactly understand that it's okay morally to choose people that are trying to help you be better. And to shy away from people who are going to drag you down. Two drowned people is not an improvement over one. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You're not morally obliged to go down with someone else's ship. Now you think that's pretty harsh and pretty rude. You can't abandon a friend in need. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is appropriate for you to look at your social surround and to make decisions. If you have a person who's hurting you and who won't quit and who's pulling you down, that is not necessary. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You go with people that are trying to elevate you. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You're not obligated to associate with people who are making your life worse. Make friends with people who want the best for you. You are obligated not to associate with people who are trying to damage the structure of being. Your being, the family being, social being, all of that. Like, no. Wrong. Move away.
Clinical psychologist, and I've spent 20 hours a week for 25 years listening to people tell me about their lives. And those people were people who were just barely hanging on to the bottom of the world, up to people who were so successful you can hardly believe it. Being a clinical psychologist, if you really listen, is like being immersed in a Dostoevsky novel all the time, because it's amazing what people tell you if you listen to them, because they're so peculiar. Like, they're like penguins or rhinoceroses or ostriches. They're unlikely creatures.
Well, you got to improve, right? And you might think, well, I'm a real fixer-upper and I'm really embarrassed about that because there's 50 things wrong with me, and like, look at that guy, and so now I feel all terrible because of the comparison and all of that. And first of all, it's unfair, especially by the time you're about 30. Your life has become quite idiosyncratic. Let's say your life has 8 dimensions: family, friends, intimate relationships. You're individually positioned in all those dimensions. Your life isn't like anyone else's life. So you see someone who's doing better than you, it's like you're only seeing one dimension at one slice of time. So it's not reasonable. You don't have the whole picture. And then you get down on yourself and take the spirit out of yourself, and you get bitter and resentful. There's nothing good about that. But you do need to improve. There's not as much of you as there should be. So what's the comparison? Well, that's easy. Just say, okay, well, here's my position in time and space right now. Here's my virtues and faults. I can be a little bit better tomorrow in some minor way. Well, that's the right comparison, because you are very much like you. Everything's the same about you.
Everything's the same about you.
And so it's the perfect comparison. You just don't have insight into the tragedy of someone else's life. You might think, well, he's rich and successful. It's like, yeah, but you just don't know. You don't know what his relationship is with his wife or his children. You don't know that he's gone through 2 divorces and his daughter won't talk to him and one of his kids is schizophrenic. And the point is, you should be better than you are, but it's not because you're worse than other people. It's because you're not everything you should be. And so you got to pick the comparison right. And then that's also ennobling and instantly hopeful. There is absolutely no doubt that you can be slightly better tomorrow than you are today. There is definitely something that you can do today that will make you slightly better for the next day. Always. Okay. You're 85, you have Alzheimer's, you're done. Sometimes you're done. Most of the time you're not, and most of the time there's something within your grasp that you could put right. See, that's the fundamental issue. It's like life is tragic. It's full of suffering and it's full of malevolence. There's no doubt about that. And it's brutal. And it's more brutal than you can even imagine in some ways, or willing to imagine. But there's something you could put right. And we don't know what would happen if you put everything you could right, if you put it right. And then we don't know what would happen if everyone did that. But you can be certain that it would be less tragic and less malevolent. And so, like...
You don't have anything better to do.
There's this idea that Jung had, which I really love, which is the idea of the shadow, which is the dark side of humanity. Its roots reached all the way to hell. He meant something very specific by that. The metaphysical element was, he meant hell, literally and metaphysically, but he also meant that if you were able to understand your dark side, then you would see in yourself a reflection of the behavior that was present at Auschwitz. And that the reason that people don't take the dark side of themselves seriously at all, even confront the fact that it exists, is because no one wants to see that reflected within them. And no wonder. Pursue what's meaningful and you'll encounter that which you least want to encounter. And that's the dragon. The dragon is also something that lives inside you. It's not something that you take the encounter with lightly. See, I kind of knew this. When I had my kids, I'd already undergone that to some degree and understood what it meant to be a bad person, terrible person. And I knew that it was easy for people to hate their children, even though they mouth the words that they love them all the time. You don't want to set them up as an enemy against you. You don't want to allow them to engage in the kind of hierarchical challenge that makes you irritable and resentful. That's not a good idea. And if the things they do make you dislike them, the probability that they will make other people dislike them is extraordinarily high. You need to know what sort of monster you are if you're going to be a good parent. And if you think, oh, I'm not a monster, it's like, oh, yes, you are. You're just an unbelievably unconscious monster, and that's actually the worst kind. Your fundamental job as a parent, especially of a child from 0 to 4, is to make that child eminently desirable socially. You're a successful parent if, when your child is 4, all sorts of other children want to play with him or her. And so then you think, well, what have you done for your child? Well, you've opened up the entire world of children to them. So because they know how to play, everywhere they go, other kids like them and will include them in their play, and play is the way that children develop. The literature on this is crystal clear. If your child is an outcast at the age of 4, the probability that anything can be done about that is almost 0. No matter what you do. And then the other thing is, if you don't allow your children to engage in dislikable behavior, then adults will like them. And the thing is, if you're good to your kid in the real way, you can help them maintain that tremendous attractiveness that they have as young children. And then wherever they go, adults welcome them and teach them things and pat them on the head and smile at them genuinely, instead of saying, oh my God, here comes that couple with that goddamn brat again. That's a horrible thing to do to a child. That's a horrible thing to do to a child. Because then everywhere they go, all the goodwill is false. There's nothing that you can do to someone that's more terrible than to put them in a world where all the goodwill directed towards them is false. Well, there's plenty of things to criticize about being it's tragic, and there's malevolence. That's basically the issue. And you can complain about that, but the thing is, if you complain about that, if you adopt that attitude, which is sort of an anti-being attitude, you go places that if you knew you were going, you probably wouldn't want to go. It's the places where, like, the kids that shot up Columbine went. Those are bad places. If you read the writings of the Columbine high school kids, and you really read them, if they don't make the hair stand up in the back of your neck, you are not paying attention. And one kid wrote things, I cannot believe that people could write. And I've exposed myself to a lot of crazy things that people have done and said. You just can't understand it. It's uncanny, you know. Well, that's where you end up if you get bitter. It's like, well, what can you do about that? Well, the world is harsh. It's like, should you criticize it? Not until you put yourself together. You got to bring everything you can to bear on the problem before you have any right to stand in judgment about being itself. And that's what these mass murderers do. That's what they're doing. That's what they're acting out. They're saying, well, I'm looking out in the world. I don't like people. They're full of flaws. They act badly. They're a cancer on the face of the planet. It'd be better if they didn't exist at all. I don't like being. It's too full of suffering and evil. I'm the judge of this. I'm going to make my goddamn case. I'm going to take them out. And then it's more than that. It's like I'm going to take them out, and I'm going to do it with innocence first. Because that's the thing you got to get about mass murderer types. They're not hunting down the guilty. That's too obvious. They're hunting down the innocent. That's the best protest. Think about it. Well, I don't want to think about it. Well, that's for sure. You bloody well don't want to think about it. But you better think about it. That's where you go when you take that criticism of being approach. It's like you don't get to do that unless you want to end up there. It's bad. So what do you do instead? Stop doing stupid things. Stop lying. Stop making things worse. Stop making yourself weak. Even in a day, you'll see that you have choices in front of you, and sometimes you don't know what to do. It's okay, you're ignorant. Maybe you make a mistake. Whatever. That's just ignorance. Malevolence is when you know what you shouldn't do, and you do it anyways. People do that all the time. And that's arrogance. That's, I'll get away with it. It's deceit, because you're lying to yourself about whether you should do this or not. You know you shouldn't. And then it's resentment because, well, it's like, I'm going to do this bad thing because that'll teach the people, that'll teach God to treat me this way. That's the terrible trinity. Deceit.
Hey, thanks for watching. This wraps up the analysis of the Nets' performance in games missed by the Stars. Scrolling down, take a look at these GG plots that are color-coded by the combination of their star players missing games, not missing games, and these are histograms. In the bottom plot, the kernel densities makes a big difference to the previous versions, which were kind of dull. So yeah, it can get fairly quick, aesthetically pleasing plots with GG plot. Thanks, catch you in the next one.